Hello, welcome back to the channel. It is Dan, Nocturne Knives, and coming at you today with a disassembly and modification video for this knife. This is a Benchmade Redoubt, and right here I have some Applied Weapons Tech scales to add to this thing. I figured since I'm doing this already, may as well go ahead and make a video out of it, and maybe it will help some people out. This is the Benchmade Redoubt, as I said. Interesting knife. It's actually got a really nice blade, but the handles are kind of garbage, in my opinion. They're plastic. You can hear that, and they have all these really like bumps that stick up and sharp edges and stuff. I'm not a fan of them. I think it really ruins the knife overall. So I have a set of these Applied Weapons Tech scales. They are made of aluminum. I'm a massive Applied Weapons Tech fan. I have a bunch of their scales and a lot of knives at this point. They're all really nice. This is a set of their blims, their blemished ones that they sell at a discount. Still really good quality. That might be the reason it was sold at a discount, is that little nick right there. Otherwise, they look and feel really, really nice. These are anodized. I think it's sniper gray is the color that AWT calls them. But anyway, let's get into it, disassemble this, and pop some new scales on it. I have a T6 driver here. Let's see, that's what the pocket clip is. T6. So I'm going to pop that screw out. And I think you might have to take the whole handle off to get the pocket clip. Oh no, here we go. Here we go. Ah, interesting. And the pocket clip slides out like that. Super easy. This body screw right here is a T6. And this one is a T6. Alright, that's off. It does have an interesting construction. This plastic back strap slots on here. That's pretty neat. Unfortunately, it's like this really annoying ridged plastic. I don't like it at all. Really not a fan of that. But some people might like it. If you're wearing gloves a lot, it is pretty grippy. Probably going to do pretty well if you're wearing gloves a lot while using your knife. You want some of that extra traction, but for a non-gloved hand, it is kind of abrasive. Now, I think this pivot is... oh, it's T10. Alright, so pivot T10 is what we're looking at. Ooh, that has a lot of Loctite on it. I don't know if you could hear that crack when I twisted it off. Well, this thing is going to be pretty well Loctited up. Yeah, see, look at all that white Loctite on it. Okay, here's what the internal look like. Interesting skeletonization on here. It's actually quite a stiff plastic handle. I don't know if you can tell, but I'm putting a decent amount of force on here, and it's barely flexing from end to end. That's actually pretty impressive. It has very little twist in it. So really, from a solidity standpoint, I can't fault the knife. It's very solid. The plastic just doesn't feel nice, in my opinion. But if you're just after a solid, really pretty solid feeling knife that's really lightweight, and you're going to be using gloves a lot with it, or maybe you have really calloused hands, then you may like this knife, because it's lightweight, it's pretty big, and these plastic handles, they're pretty dang stiff, actually. See, if I put them together like this, yeah, they're really pretty stiff, pretty solid. Here's the internal assembly here. Let's grab those washers out of there. Boom, and boom, just like that. Nice big washers on that. I like that. I appreciate that. Now I'm going to clean everything off. That's just some rubbing alcohol on a little cloth cleaning patch. Yeah, I like these washers. Look, they're actually pretty thick. See if I can get a focus. Yeah, pretty thick, really big washers, pretty impressive there. I like that. Yeah, if they had done a different texturing, I think, on the plastic here, then I don't think I'd have any problems with this at all. All right, let me get in here, wipe off some of that oil on the inside of these liners. They have classic Benchmade kind of cartridge style liner here. No problem. Okay, pretty clean. I'm gonna wipe off the blade real quick. This thing is Cerakoted, and then it has this nice masked off portion where the washers ride, and then also on the tang where the axis lock bar rides. I'm gonna take this pivot and try and just get some of that old Loctite off, because a bunch of accumulated Loctite will interfere with fresh Loctite when you add that as you reassemble it, which I would recommend Loctiting the pivot. I always do that. Now for these washers, I'm going to do a little extra step, not necessary, but usually is a little bit nicer. Okay, I think this was the blade side. It's slightly smoother, more polished. I'm just going to take it on a strop. This is 1 micron compound on leather, and just give it a little polish, shine it up a little bit, just like that. You can see how much shinier that is now. And it's just going to make things a little bit smoother, speed the break-in process. This is not necessary. Same thing here. Just an extra thing that you can do. Anything from like 5 micron down to half a micron would work just fine for this purpose. Really just giving it a light polish. You don't want to do too much, otherwise you could be creating a rounded surface on this washer, and you do want it to be pretty nice and flat so that you get even contact on the blade. Now, reassembly time. I'm going to start by taking the liner assembly and popping it onto one side of the scales. It does not matter which side you start with. And then I'm going to take my stop pin screw, put that in first, and then I'm going to take one of the liner screws and put that in like that. And this is a general assembly video, and you could use this as a reference for the knife itself unmodded with the stock handles or with whatever. And this will also apply to most Benchmade knives. Don't forget, on this knife in particular, the Redoubt, if you get Applied Weapons Tech scales, they come with an extra pin right here. This goes back here, and it is an extra locating point for the handles, because without that pin, the only location would be around the liners, and you would have no support here at the back of the knife. So you need this pin for the back of the knife, otherwise it'll be all flopping all around. Don't forget that as you're assembling. I'm going to put in this liner screw and now the stop pin screw. And you will notice that I do not have the blade in currently. If you've taken apart a lot of Benchmades, you know why I'm doing that. But if you're not used to it, you might be confused. Give it 1 second and you'll see what we're going for here. Now I'm going to take my blade, and I have some grease for the washers. On washers, I do like to put grease rather than oil. It doesn't make a huge difference, but washers are going to be more resistant to grime and dust and dirt than bearings. And if I'm already getting that extra resistance, I kind of like to double down on that and go with grease, which is going to stay put better. It's going to tend to last a little bit longer than most oils, just because it doesn't flow around. Now I'm going to take the polished side of the washer and put that against the blade, and then same on the other side. I'm going to take the polished side of the washer and put it against the blade. You'll notice I just did some very, very small dots of grease. You do not want a lot here. You don't need a lot. And you're going to drop the washers on, and they're just going to stay there because the tension of the grease or oil, whatever, is going to just hold them on the blade. Now comes where these two parts meet. You're going to take the blade and washer assembly and just thread it into the handle and a locked washer. This is the tricky and sometimes aggravating part, because you just got to get it. It takes some wiggling, takes some finagling. Sometimes it helps to hold the washers in place here, so you can push them on. And actually what I'm going to do here is loosen these screws holding the liners together. I'm just going to loosen them all around. The stop pin liner screws. That should give me a little extra to work with. Yeah, that's better. That's what you want to do, is loosen those screws. Now, see, I've put it through and I can see a perfect opening through the pivot. I have both washers there. Make sure that both washers are lined up with the pivot and the blade is lined up with the pivot. And then I'm going to take my driver and put that in there and just rotate it around to line up the washers and the pivot. Now, here is the pivot pin. On this one, I'm going to put this in with the show side being this flat domed side, just because I like that slightly better, I think. Now, this one slid in super easy. If it doesn't slide in easily, you're just going to take it out and go and line up those washers and blade a little more. And you also have to be pulling down on the lock to allow the blade to settle into the correct position. So it's a tricky thing. You got to hold on here, pull on the lock, wiggle around on the washers and everything. But this has slid in. And also notice this pivot has a D shape. There is a directionality to this pivot assembly. You have to get the pivot lined up with the D shape and everything. Again, pretty fiddly. With a little practice, it's not too difficult though. Right, now this, hold on, I'm going to go ahead and tighten down my body screws here. Just like that. And then we're going to go with the pivot, and I have some Loctite here. This is, this might be Vibratite. I got a little sample of it from Lynch Lynch Northwest, the last time I ordered some clips, just to see how it compares to Loctite. Seems to work just fine in my uses so far. But any blue Loctite is going to work just fine for this. And you just need a little bit. You don't want to dump it on the threads or dump it into the pivot barrel or anything like that. Just enough to coat about half the threads. It's going to do just fine. Okay, get that moderately tight. Okay, feels fine. Now, back of the knife, I think you need to put this through here. There we go, and this is D-shaped as well, and there's a directionality to this hole. Make sure you get that lined up. Put that through, and the screw goes on the other side. Before I do that, if you want to go with the stock clip, now is when you would drop that in here. But I'm not sure which clip I'm going to go with. That's what it would look like here. Yeah, I don't know if I love this clip. It's got really, really low clearance. I'm not a huge fan of that. Really tight under there. And I have this extra Lynch clip, so I think that's what I'm going to go with for this build. And I did not get this Lynch clip for this build, but I will take it anyway. That looks pretty good with the blade. So that's what that's going to look like right there. Now, I'm not sure if this, I think this needs to go in, and then the clip is going to go over it. Yeah, let's try that. Let's see what happens. That's a nice thing about these Applied Weapons Tech scales, is they come with these extra clip holes drilled, so you can use any Benchmade, you can use any standard Benchmade clip you would like on here. And you're not limited to just the stock proprietary clip, which is not going to fit on any other knives. And with the lynch clip, you're going to get some extra screws right here. Oh, got a lot of extra screws in here. Awesome. Put the screw in the clip, put the clip against the knife, then get your driver on it. And not going to tighten that all the way down. Going to leave it a little bit loose. Now put in the second screw. Just like that. Now I'm going to tighten both of them down completely like that. And there you go. Now let's check our pivot tension. It's way too tight right now. Loosen that up. Wow, it feels so much better. These ergos are awesome on these AWT scales. All right, action already really nice. I'm going to take just a little bit of oil. That's what I'm going to use for the tang of the blade, and this is for where it contacts the axis lock bar. So I want to lube that just a little bit. You could use grease, you could use oil. It doesn't make a huge difference. It's gonna pretty much have the same effect, and you just want to use a little bit. That's pretty good, pretty smooth. Just a little bit of play, not surprising. Nothing up and down, just a little bit side to side. That's pretty typical for axis locks. Really smooth still though, so I'm going to tighten it down a little bit. That's almost all the play gone. There, I want it just a little more snug than would be ideal, because I know it will break in. The washers and all the assembly will break in, and it will get slightly looser and slightly smoother. So you want it just a tiny, tiny bit extra snug so things can kind of loosen up. Here's what the final build looks like. Pretty sweet on this knife. The gray looks really cool with the black hardware and this dark gray black blade. Pretty sweet in my opinion. The ergos are so much better than stock. It's crazy. You don't have any of those sharp edges. You have really nice contouring. You can see these scales are 3D contoured. You have these really big, generous scallops and everything. No sharp edges. Really, really nice. I wear a medium to large size glove. Fits perfectly in, any grip. That's really sweet. Well, there you go. Here is the Benchmade Redoubt build. And by the way, this is the Bench Northwest Benchmade clip, stubby, and blacksmith finish. I hope you found this video interesting. I hope you enjoyed it. Maybe you even learned something. If you did, definitely appreciate it. Go down, hit that like button, subscribe button. And if you have any questions or comments, any thoughts, anything like that, I would love to hear them. Go drop a comment down below. And with all that said, thank you very much for watching, and I'll catch you on the next one.